Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
Pint Glass Football. I'm your host, Brad Fowler. What's up, PGF Nation? Today, we'll give you our top 6 potential bounce-back players in the NFL for 2024. Joining me, like always, though, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, what is going on?
Getting into these dog days of summer, Brad, we're going to be able to have a lot of fun and go over a lot of different things and bring something new to our audience.
Absolutely, Alex. A lot to talk about in the offseason, a lot of fun things to really look at and project out going into next year. So why not look at some guys that we think could bounce back? Because we see this all the time. Guys that kind of have a down year, maybe didn't perform up to expectations of what we thought. And then we try to find, okay, who are the guys that are going to bounce back and play like they did in years past? The first guy for me, Alex, A.J. Terrell, the cornerback for the Atlanta Falcons. Look, A.J. Terrell was one of the NFL's best cornerbacks just a couple years ago. If you look at the season he had in 2021, he looked like a guy who was developing into a premier cornerback in the NFL. His play, it fell off a little bit these past 2 years. Hasn't looked like that guy we saw then. But now you bring in head coach Raheem Morris. I think this should really benefit A.J. Terrell. This is a coach that has had a track record of success when it comes to improving defenses, especially improving secondaries. One of the best defensive-minded coaches in the NFL. I think that bodes well for a guy like A.J. Terrell.
Yeah, I have to agree with you here. With Raheem Morris, a lot of what we've done, if we know anything about Raheem Morris, he really focuses a lot on what happens with the DBs. And A.J. Terrell, like you said, coming out, he came out the tunnel gangbusters, and then there's a little bit of an area where he kind of went mid after he got the contract, and some people thought that was because he got the contract. But, you know, you can tend to drag a little bit when there's uncertainty around the team, when there's a lot of losing. I believe in what you said. Raheem Morris comes in, tightens things up, straightens out the tie, and this guy gets back to the top 3, top 4, or top 5, wherever you want to put him at, where he belongs. For me, Brad, and it may come as a surprise to some people. I know it came as a surprise to you because we have stark differences between this one player. But Kyler Murray, for me, is a guy I'm looking to have a bounce-back season. And you know what? And I don't think people say, well, oh, it's because he has Marvin Harrison, or it's because there's new coaching staff there and he's going to have a now full off season and now hopefully a full season. I don't think it's that. I think it's him. When I watched him come back from the 7 to 8 game layoff that he had when they moved on from Joshua Dobbs, and when I saw him come back in there, I saw a more focused player. I saw a player that was going through more progressions. I saw a player that wasn't pouting or going back and forth with coaches on the sideline. He seemed a little bit more comfortable in his surroundings. He seems like he knew what was going on, and he seems to have settled down some. Now, I don't know when the new Call of Duty game is coming on, so everything I can be saying may go up in smoke. But for the most part, I believe that Kyler Murray is coming back in as a focused young man. And it does have something to do with the coaching, but initially when he first came back, I think it was a lot with him. But I believe he continued that this offseason. I've kind of been tracking him. It's kind of been a very quiet offseason. Usually I hear some outside of football things, like some of the stupid things we were hearing last year about his hair braid was talking. I don't hear any of that. It's quiet. And that's something you want to see. I know there's a word that's moving around the atmosphere called quarterbackial. He's feeling very quarterbackial going into this new season with the new weapons and now a full OTAs and training camp with this new coaching staff.
Yeah, Kyler Murray, unbelievably talented guy. We know that. He's had a lot of moments where he looked like a special quarterback, but you kind of hit on it there jokingly with the Call of Duty thing. I've always questioned the work ethic. I've always questioned just how dedicated he is to being a great quarterback, to being a leader. I think there's a lot left to be desired when it comes to that. And maybe he's matured. To your point, Alex, maybe this is a new Kyler Murray. Maybe he realizes that he has to take another step in his development in order to become the franchise quarterback that the Cardinals want him to be. I just have to wonder if this guy has peaked. When you look at the way he limped through really the last 2 seasons, staying healthy, I should say, I think has been one of the biggest obstacles for him as well. And this was something going all the way back to when he was drafted. This was the biggest red flag I had for Kyler Murray, was his size, and would it be a durability issue in the NFL? And so far it has been, especially because of his athleticism, his mobility. It lends himself to getting out of the pocket, taking a lot of hits. I just wonder if this guy is ever really going to become the guy that we hoped. I have my doubts. I didn't have a whole lot of Kyler Murray stock left. I sold all of it, I think, a year ago. Yes, he came back, like you said, last year, showed some improvement. I do think Marvin Harrison Jr. certainly helps give him a big-time weapon. I do think the coaching staff has shown some promise as well. And I do like what we saw at the end of the year last year. But I have a hard time putting any money on the table and betting on a guy like Kyler Murray. I've got another cornerback that's going to make my bounce back list here, Alex, and that's Jair Alexander for the Green Bay Packers. 2023, he dealt with some injuries. He actually had multiple injuries, only played in 7 games, had the fewest snaps of his career. And I think it really helped, or I think it really hurt him from a productivity standpoint. He just didn't quite look like the guy we had seen in years past. Coming into 24, healthy, ready to go. This is a guy who's only 27 years old. He should be in the prime of his career. And when you look at the fact that the Packers also added safety Xavier McKinney in free agency, I think that was a little bit of an under-the-radar move that I think was a home run for this team. I think that move alone should really allow Alexander to be even more aggressive on the outside. He didn't have a single interception last year. I think this allows him to play a little more loose, a little more free and aggressive. And I think we see a better version of Jair Alexander in 2024.
Yeah, you know what? Jair Alexander actually has a bullseye on his back because, and he was a person that I was going to talk about in another podcast. I was thinking about talking about players that need to clean it up or they're gone. He's on that list too, because the end of next season, if he has anything close to what he has outside of a stellar season, I think he's gone next year because they can cut him. And let's remember, Brad, they also have to re-sign their quarterback as well in the next offseason, but he will save them by cutting him. The Green Bay Packers will save $17.5 million. So it's not only needs to be a bounce back year for Jair Alexander, but he needs to have a great year. But even if he does have a great comeback year, I think he still could get cut. So there's a lot riding on this, and he's going to be 28 years old going into the following season. So I know he's going to be looking for another contract soon. So there might be a little bit of some friction there as well. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we may see him hold out or something like that this offseason, but he's definitely due for a bounce back. I do like the player. He was a guy similar to AJ Terrell that was up there, that was trending in the right direction. Then kind of, I don't know what happened. I mean, injuries, and I know there was some internal things going on where I was actually had him thinking that he was going to get cut this offseason because they could have saved a lot of money if they cut him now as well, but they didn't. They kept him. Young team trending up, where coaching and front office seems to settle him down, and now hopefully they have him in tow to try and make a run, because I think he can be a very important piece as the Green Bay Packers try to make another run this year. You know what, Brad? I'm going to dip my toe into the defensive backfield, quote unquote, myself, and I'm going to say Minkah Fitzpatrick. Minkah Fitzpatrick has been an impact player from the time that the Steelers made the trade for him to save him from Miami, and I put the emphasis on save him from Miami, especially with a guy like Mike Tomlin, similar to Raheem Morris, two guys that coach together in Tampa Bay that know that the defensive backfield well and how to coach those guys up. I think he's due for a breakout season again, and I shouldn't say breakout season, but let's say, as we say, return to form as an all-pro defensive back free safety. And I believe in this role, with the trade they made to get Dante Jackson from the Panthers, and if Joey Porter can continue his ascension into being a solid performer as well, I think you can put Minkah back to being a true free safety, because when they traded for him, I believe they still had Joe Higdon, who was still a very good corner, very, very capable corner, and they were able to do some things. But since they've had some let's say, lower player talent at the defensive backfield. He's had to find himself playing the slot, sometimes really being stuck to playing over the top on specific DBs because they couldn't cover. But now I think with these two DBs, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be able to get back to a top defense because they weren't good last year. I believe last year they were like 25th or 26th. But I also think that Minkah Fitzpatrick can get back to being a free ball hawking free safety that we saw when he first got there. We only removed 2 from 2 years when he led the league with 6 interceptions, but I think he's due for a big bounce back season.
Yeah, Minkah Fitzpatrick just a couple years ago was being viewed as one of, if not the top safety in the game. 2023 took a little bit of a dip. Probably the worst year of his career from a statistical standpoint, but I think a bounce back could be in line here for him as well. I think when he's healthy, he's one of the best in the league. And I think coming into this season with a clean bill of health, with an improved defense on paper, some young players who are trending up for this Steelers roster, I think we could see a really good season from Minkah Fitzpatrick once again. Did you know that Pint Glass Football is more than just this podcast? We have an exclusive newsletter. Sign up for free at pintglassfootball.com to receive articles and insights delivered straight to your inbox. But wait, there's more. We're excited to announce our brand new YouTube channel. Not only can you listen to our podcast on YouTube, but you'll also find exclusive video content waiting for you. So hit the pause button right now and go subscribe to our newsletter and hit that subscribe button on YouTube to stay connected with the latest football news and our exclusive content. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. We personally love the pick'em game. Just pick between 2 and 5 players to build a pick'em entry. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Download the Underdog Fantasy app and sign up today with promo code PGF. That's promo code PGF to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. The official ticketing app of Pint Glass Football is now SeatGeek. I can't recommend them enough, guys. I've been using SeatGeek for years. You want to go to a game this season? SeatGeek is here to take the confusion out of buying tickets, making sure you get the best seats at the best prices. With SeatGeek, you'll never have to worry about overpaying for tickets again. How? They put a 0 to 10 score on each ticket, so you know you're getting a good deal. But here's the real game changer. You can get $20 off your first ticket purchase with the code PGFPOD. That's right, $20 off with code PGFPOD. This season, make every game day epic with SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and remember to enter the code PGFPOD to grab your $20 discount. I've got an offensive player here on my top 3 bounce back players for 2024. How about running back Ramondre Stevenson of the Patriots? This is a guy who had a great start to his career. He averaged 4.6 and 5 yards per carry his first 2 years in the league. Productive player. Last year, that number dropped all the way down to 4 yards per carry. This is a guy who dealt with some injuries and a quarterback room that was a mess in New England. Now you add a young quarterback in Drake May, who is also athletic and can run. 2 young wide receivers that we loved coming out of this draft, and some good young offensive linemen to help block up front. I think he's ready for a bounce back season, especially knowing that defenses are not going to be able to key in on him as much with all these new weapons and with a good young quarterback. I think Stevenson has a big year for New England.
Brad, I don't know why you keep talking about him last season and not mentioning Zeke. It's so weird to me. I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, but you're absolutely right. This is I like to call them Bill Belichick specials. A guy that comes out of nowhere for the most part, that most people aren't aware of. And if you go through his career, you know, he was trending up in 21 and 22 last year. To Brad's point, had a down year. He was sharing a bit of the backfield with, even though Brad doesn't want to mention Zeke, he was sharing the backfield, like literally sharing the backfield. I think Zeke had about 650 yards rushing and Ramondre had about 625. So they were literally truly splitting the backfield evenly. So I think if you can get him back in tow, obviously there's an entirely new regime around the Patriots. We saw that this year when they drafted the first 5 to 6 rounds, they drafted all offense. So there's an emphasis on the offense. We know that they have a quarterback in there, so it's going to be developing. And hopefully, if the quarterback can hit or be solid and start flashing, then you're right. Those 9-man front, 8 9-man fronts that Ramondre and Zeke was seeing last year, he won't be seeing those. He's a hard runner. He's a hard runner through the whole pause. And I think he does a lot of what you like in your quintessential running back. He's not going to catch the ball out the backfield a lot, even though I believe he actually has the ability to. So maybe they start to use that a little bit more and maybe use the full array of what Ramondre Stevenson can do. So I'm looking not only forward to him coming back, but perhaps even showing off the dual threat that he can be in the passing game as well. And Brad, you know what's funny? Sticking with the running back theme, I'm going to go to Austin Eckler. I think this is a guy who is a dual threat. Speaking of dual threats, who's literally been the definition, at least over the previous 2 seasons, of a true dual threat running back. He led the league in rushing and receiving touchdowns over the past 2 seasons, excluding last year. So 21 and 22, he led the league in that category. And then this past season was a down year for him. He was in a contract year. Some people say may have been playing not to get hurt. He is going to be 29 years old. He's on a 1-year deal, rather a 2-year deal, but essentially it's a 1-year deal because the Commanders can get out of it after 1 year. But he's on a 1-year deal with the Commanders, with that young quarterback, with that young team, and the reshaping, new ownership, new front office, new coaching staff all together. Here comes a veteran who can provide a lot for a young quarterback by running the ball as well as receiving the ball. He can be a key weapon in this offense. By the way, that Commanders backfield can quite be dangerous if they put it all together. But I think we're looking for a bounce back season. Hopefully, Eckler gets the starting job, not only for himself or the Commanders, but for us as fantasy owners. This guy was gold in fantasy. Like I said, the rushing and receiving, especially you guys in the PPR league, this is a guy that we need to do well because we need him on our fantasy. This is a guy you draft in the first 2 to 3 rounds because of his production. So I look for him to have a big bounce back year.
Alex, you could make a case that Austin Eckler has really been one of the most underrated players in the NFL, and he's been underrated really since he came into the league. I mean, he was an undrafted rookie, made the roster for the Chargers, 53-man roster his rookie year, and then had over 1,000 all-purpose yards in his second season. By the time he was in his third season, he had really developed into a guy that was one of the most versatile players in the league. I mean, a guy that can really catch the ball out of the backfield, a dynamic all-around back, a guy who's great. Last year took a dip, though, and part of it might have been just the organizational failure of the Chargers. They had the injury to Justin Herbert that certainly didn't help, but we definitely saw him take a step back last year. I think a change of scenery in Washington with Jayden Daniels, who, look, PGF Nation, you guys know, we're not the highest on Jayden Daniels, but I will say this. He's an athletic, talented quarterback, and he's a rookie. And a lot of times what do rookies do? They tend to play it safe when they don't know what's in front of them, and that means checkdowns, and it means looking for safety valves. In your running back and your tight end are usually the guys that receive a lot of those catches. So bringing in a guy like Eckler, a guy that can kind of be a safety blanket and escape route for a young quarterback like Jayden Daniels, I think it's really going to boost his productivity this year, and he's going to be back to form, so to speak, as a dynamic dual threat running back for the Commanders. I think this is a great potential bounce back year for Austin Eckler. If you enjoy the podcast, do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. we continue more off-season stories, the NFL, and of course, college football. But once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.
Zencastr is the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. It provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content all from one dashboard. Zencastr's post-production process takes the headache out of audio production. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. Coordinating all your guests to record in person is painful and tedious. Easily invite up to 11 participants per recording with one click. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code PGFP, and you'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.